Wait, before you scroll past this, I need you to pause for just a second, because a massive, literally historic paradigm shift just happened to our global food supply, and it fundamentally changes humanity's relationship with the ocean. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a brand new landmark report from the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, or the FAO. And look, what we're about to dive into isn't just about fish, right? It's about the very future of how we survive on this planet. 223.2 million tons. I mean, it's almost impossible to wrap your head around that kind of weight. To put that into perspective, that is a whole lot of shipping containers. But this number represents the record-breaking total global fisheries and aquaculture production for the year 2022. It's a 4.4% surge from just 2 years prior. We are pulling more aquatic food from our waters than at any other point in human history, fueling a multi-billion-dollar global industry. But you know what? The total weight isn't even the real story here. The real story is how we're getting it.
And that brings us to the true tipping point in the data. For the very first time in recorded human history, farmed aquatic animal production, so what we call aquaculture, has officially surpassed the wild catch from capture fisheries. Just think about that for a second. For thousands of years, humans have basically been hunter-gatherers of the sea. But as of 2022, we are officially more farmers than we are hunters when it comes to aquatic animals. Mind-blowing, right? All right. Let's get into Section 1, a historic food milestone. So we're looking at a fundamental shift in our food system here. It's a shift that's been building quietly for decades, but it's now officially crossed historic threshold. Global aquaculture production hit an absolutely unprecedented 130.9 million tons in 2022. Now, of that massive total, farmed aquatic animals, so, your farmed salmon, tilapia, shrimp, the whole shebang, accounted for 94.4 million tons. That represents 51% of the total aquatic animal production globally. We have essentially domesticated the seas, completely changing how we harvest aquatic life to feed our growing world.
Let's move right along to Section 2, the aquaculture boom. So, how exactly did we get here? Well, the sheer velocity of our consumption is staggering. Back in 1961, the average person ate about 9.1 kilograms of aquatic food per year. Fast forward to 2022, and that number has skyrocketed to 20.7 kilograms per person. But here is the absolutely crucial point. This consumption has grown at nearly twice the rate of the world population. So we aren't just eating more seafood because there are more of us on Earth. We are eating significantly more seafood per person. It's become a critical source of global protein. To manage this skyrocketing demand, the FAO Director General, Kuo Dongyu, is advocating for what he calls a blue transformation. The goal here is to meet the requirements of better production, better nutrition, a better environment, and a better life. This blue transformation is essentially their strategic blueprint moving forward. It's an acknowledgement that, hey, while farming the seas is definitely our future, it absolutely has to be done carefully, sustainably, and equitably, making sure we leave no one behind. Which naturally brings us to Section 3, is our seafood sustainable? This is the elephant in the room, right? I know exactly what you're thinking as you watch this explainer is, all this seafood actually sustainable? With hundreds of millions of tons being harvested, worrying about the environmental impact is a perfectly valid and frankly pressing concern. So let's look at the data neutrally. The report highlights a slightly concerning trend in wild ocean capture. The proportion of marine stocks fished within biologically sustainable levels actually decreased. It dropped by 2.3%, down to 62.3% in 2021 compared to 2019. This means nearly 38% of monitored marine stocks are being overfished right now. It's a very clear signal that our wild oceans are under immense, increasing pressure. But hold on, before we sound the absolute alarm, let's look at the flip side here, 76.9%. When the FAO weighted those sustainable stocks by their actual production volume, meaning the sheer amount of fish actually being landed and brought to port, nearly 77% of landings are coming from those biologically sustainable stocks. So what you should really take away from this is that where effective fisheries management is applied, it works. The heavily managed stocks are yielding the most food sustainably, which proves that smart policy is vital to reversing these declining trends. All right. Section 4, who feeds the world? Let's pivot from the ocean back to land and specifically to the human element. Who exactly is doing all this farming and fishing? Geographically, it's pretty clear-cut. One region holds massive dominance. Asia produces a whopping 70% of all aquatic animals globally. They are the undeniable center of gravity for global aquatic food production. Meanwhile, Europe and Latin America tie for a distant second at 9% each, and Africa sits at 7%. Breaking that down even further into specific countries, the concentration is intense. The top 5 producers are led massively by China, taking up 36% of global production. They're followed by India, Indonesia, Vietnam, and Peru. Now, a really key takeaway from the FAO report is that while these countries dominate, a lot of low-income nations, particularly in Africa, aren't yet utilizing their full aquaculture potential. Targeted policies and investments are urgently needed in those areas to boost sustainable local food supplies.
And you know, we can't talk about these numbers without talking about the people behind them. The primary fisheries and aquaculture workforce is massive. We're talking 61.8 million people relying directly on this for their livelihoods. While 54% are in wild fisheries and 36% are in aquaculture, what's incredibly crucial to highlight here is the gender breakdown. While women make up just 24% of the overall workforce, they constitute a massive 62% of the processing subsector. The report stresses that gender inequality, wage gaps, and insufficient recognition of women's vital contributions are issues that still urgently need addressing in this booming industry.
Finally, let's dive into Section 5, the future of food. So, we've seen where we are, but where are we going? What does this historic shift actually mean for our global survival? And quite literally, what does this mean for your very own dinner plate in the decades to come? Let's walk through the timeline of the FAO's projections. Step 1. By 2032, aquatic animal production is expected to jump by another 10%, reaching 205 million tons. But look at Step 2. By the year 2050, just to keep up with our booming global population and maintain the amount of seafood we currently eat per person, we are going to require 36 million more tons of aquatic food. That's a 22% increase required just to maintain the status quo and prevent rising hunger and malnutrition. And this brings us to a critical crossroad for humanity. We've officially transitioned from hunters of the sea to farmers of the water. But with 36 million more tons of aquatic food needed by 2050 just to feed the world, how we manage this blue transformation is going to dictate the entire future of our oceans. So I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below this post. With this massive shift toward farmed seafood, what do you think will be on your plate in 2050? Are you going to embrace farmed fish,